Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Tropical MBA podcast, where we help you grow a location-independent business from your laptop. There's a lot of talk about creating community as an extension to your product or creating a community around the customers to your product. One of the most effective ways to do that is by hosting events, either in person or virtual. So today, what I want to do is break down how we are doing this and how our customers are doing this. Because events are one of these things where when we're seeking a new channel, a marketing channel, either word of mouth, we want to create buzz in our customer base. We want to give, even as a sales tool, like delivering value to our customers. Events are one of it's sort of like on the front end, they're the easiest thing to gin up, right? You can conceive of an event, get people there and start delivering value. And then on the back end, there can be some complication about how to actually organize the event and get that value delivered. So we're going to break it down into two parts. On the front end, we're going to talk about how do people make money from events? Because a lot of people don't have a clear vision of how they could make more money in their business by hosting an event. And then at the second part of the episode, we're going to talk about some ideas and concepts for driving value, for having a solid operation, and for, quote, getting out alive from your event with your P&L in order and your business stronger for having done it. To help me and you do that today, I've invited Alex Harling, our Senior Community Manager, onto the podcast. Welcome to the program, Alex.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here.
So, Alex, you have a lot of credibility in doing this, and the reason we invited you to the show is for our last event in Bangkok, 55 of our attendees gave us a straight 10 out of 10. And we had our highest NPS score ever. So congrats to you. And we're looking forward to hearing what you've learned through hosting handfuls and handfuls of events for listeners of this podcast. You want to maybe give a little bit of your background before we get started? Let us know your name and like what it is you do and all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for welcoming me here. My name is Alex Harling. I'm the Senior Community Manager of the Dynamite Circle and DC Black as well. So I've been around working with you since 2018, which is a long time. And when I first started working with you guys, it was for Dynamite Jobs. And you always had me at the events and, on the periphery, seeing what was going on, but usually as a sponsor at the events. So I got that angle. And then took 2023, fully switched over to running a community. And since then, I've got going nonstop, trying to make this community as best it can be. But the main focus is events. And then when people ask me day to day, I just moved into a new apartment, so I'm meeting the neighbors. And when they say, "Hey, what do you do?" I say, "I run events." It's very easy to describe what that is. So.
One of the things I just want to mention at the top, it's pretty easy if you don't run events currently to just shut off the events episode. And the pitch I want to make to anybody listening right now is there's a reason that in-person is sticky. There's a reason we get on the phone to make high-ticket sales. There's a reason why traveling salespeople exist. I think that events as a channel, events as a path to monetization is incredibly sticky for your brand. And I think there's so few businesses who wouldn't benefit from some kind of event element for their partners, for their customers. And so what we want to do is like walk through a bunch of different ways brands and businesses can make money with events, take a look at them, and maybe something slots in for the listeners to say, wow, I could really do an event. And we're seeing our customers, our members hosting events all around the world, all different types of formats, all different types of brand value happening from it. So we want to review some of those today and see if we can't jog up some event-y type ideas to help improve the listeners' businesses.
Other thing worth mentioning too, Dan, is we could define event because you and I are mostly talking about 200-300 people person events, but the next month in New York we're going to have 30 members there. It's a 30-person event, and I think all of us are hosting events all the time, whether it's a birthday party or like a dinner or coffee for a few people. So these components, I believe that they ring true for whether it's a smaller event of just a handful to a few hundred. So like you said, Dan, you might not be throwing a conference, but you're going to be hosting some kind of gathering, and this will be useful for you.
Yeah. And well, as we're recording right now, there is a virtual event happening run by our community manager that is welcoming new customers into our brand. And what are they doing? They're on a group call. They've done a little bit of prep. They're sharing their story with each other. They're getting to know each other, and they're getting exposed to different ways they can get value from our brand. So it's a simple way, like, do you have a customer onboarding event, a customer welcome event?
Exactly.
So we're going to dig into all these elements, and hopefully listeners can take this and run with it as many have done so in the past.
Before we jump into how you make money with events, I get a lot of questions on how to run an event. And my first question back to the person who's inquiring is, what's your goal with the event? Because there are so many different ways that you can have an event. I kind of consider it like, what kind of gathering are you trying to host? It can be anywhere from you have some podcast listeners or YouTube listeners in your city, and you want to get them together. You're going to New York or Chicago, or a place where you have a handful of clients and you want to bring them together, or you're trying to host a conference. So that's the main thing I'm trying to nail down is what is your main goal here? Who are you bringing together and why? And what's the main reason to bring everyone there? There's a really great book that I recommend for anyone who wants to host any kind of gathering. And ironically, it's called The Art of Gathering. We got together with our chapter leads in Bangkok last month and gave a copy to each member. Our chapter leads host our meetups throughout the world for our community. But some of the main lessons for this is we're gathering all the time, and oftentimes we just phone it in, and there's so many opportunities there. So you need to make it clear why everyone is going to be there and what they're getting out of it. And everyone is looking for a leader. So a common thing I get is another kind of person who asks to host events is not just people who want to host it for their own company, but people want to host events for us, for the DC. And we make it look easy, which, it's a nice compliment that we receive, but there's a lot behind it. And people will say, oh, you just put good people in a room and good things will happen. There's some truth in that, but that's not really how it goes. And what you need to do when you're hosting an event is there needs to be leadership. There needs to be purpose. There needs to be a main reason why everyone is all there. And structure. So generally when someone's asking me about how to run an event, we get down to, well, who are you bringing together? What's the reason? And then let's discuss how you're going to lead them through that gathering.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about just having a friend visit your hometown, if you ask them what type of food they're interested in, you've broken down as a leader, but we've all done it, right? It's like there is a type of food that you have prearranged for them to eat, and there is a reason why you're taking them to that place. And I think this basic principle of like pervasive and kind leadership is a good one if you're going to host any kind of event, which is you are taking the role of the person who has selected the appropriate dinner place, not only because you believe they'll find it delicious, but because there's a larger narrative reason, whether it's convenience or culture or some kind of knowledge or narrative we can have access to. We're in New York, we're going to eat some bagels, and this is the bagel shop that got inspired by this. And even if you don't love bagels, it's something that you can participate in together. If it's a red flag and I cannot eat a bagel because I'm gluten intolerant, we have a gluten option, or we can simply get you a bag. We can do something different. But the idea that there's this automatic button that every minute of the day is either, hey, we're switched off, we're switched on. Here's the reason we're doing this. We're setting the frame. We're setting the tone. We have the leadership. We call it like the conveyor belt principle. It's like once you buy that ticket, you should be able to follow the emails clearly. You're on a conveyor belt. And I think this applies for everything from a dinner party to a bike ride. I mean, I've hosted hundreds of bike rides, same kind of deal, like setting expectations, telling a little story at the top of the bike ride. It makes for such a clearer value exchange than asking people their preferences during the event. It should have already been sorted out and there's a plan in place.
The dinner party example is excellent because when someone wants to become a host, they think like they're going to step on a pedestal and they're changing who they are. And I try to say, like, don't imagine yourself as a host right now. Imagine yourself as a guest. Imagine yourself at that dinner party where you sat down for 2.5 hours and you weren't able to move and you talked to these two same people all night. What would have made that better? I know someone listening might say, I'm not going to host a dinner party or whatnot, but this relates to my kid's birthday party 2 months ago. Every single evening party at our Bangkok event, the parties coming up at our New York event, there will be moments where people are sitting around, like they finish their food, not sure what to do. And as a host, you need to put yourself in their shoes and think, what would make this better? You don't have to be entertainer. You don't need to be an MC, but lead them through what we're going to be doing tonight. And we can dig into all those different ways to the nitty gritty of how to run an event. But that's how I generally started off with how to run an event. Don't just invite people and tell them, hey, we're going to have pizza. Good luck. You're going to guide them through that pizza. Here's why we're having this pizza. Here's why we're all getting together. Here's why you should talk to these people. Here's why we're all connected and similar.
Yeah. And when you take the pressure off yourself like that and you just start to think about it, you're suggesting, you can lead by design. You don't have to lead and be the entertainer for everybody. You show up to a party and you might be of different friendship groups. And so how are you going to get these people to interact with you? Is that a priority for you? Now, with the birthday parties and the weddings and stuff, for a lot of people, it's not a priority, and that's okay. But when these are your customers, when these are your prospects, when these are your community members or whatever, you don't want to sort of have a leaky bucket. You want everybody to get the most value possible for this big time commitment they've made to come out to your event or to come to your virtual event. Okay, Alex, so the hardest part about events is, I think, having a money model that makes sense. So I want to breeze through 10 ideas of how to make money with events. There's countless before we get into the value delivery part. And by the way, we have our checklist of how we do this. Our NPS score was through the roof at our last event. So we're going to share our checklist. If you look in the show notes of this episode, you can download it. You can email us back and forth. We want to help you host a successful event as well for your brand. So we have that downloadable available. Thanks for making that available, Alex. All right. So how to make money with events. The first is simply the value delivery and then a hard pitch at the end. This is like a classic event monetization. If you have your sales pitch online or whatever, you can invite prospects or customers and have a percentage hypothesis of how many will upgrade into some kind of premium tier of your product. And this is basically really effective to sell in a room if you can manage the event experience. So if, for example, I wanted to sell my coaching services, my executive coaching services, I could invite 20 prospects to a room or a webinar and simply executive coach for 2 to 3 hours. So have a free value exchange. This mirrors a standard sales process, which is, in order to sell high ticket, you have to deliver a lot of value up front. An event is a great format to do that. When I have everybody in the room hearing it together and they hear at the end that they could have this for the next 6 months, and that's going to be at this price. If you can have some people that have pre-identified that they want to buy, they're buying in front of the other people. Hey, people want to get involved in that. They see who's in the room. They see the energy. They want to continue for the next 6 months. So this kind of invite people to a free value delivery session and then upsell them into continuity while they're all experiencing that offer together. That offer is limited. It is available only to the people that are right here, right now. It is special to them because they've been through this experience together. This is typically a great way to make money with events. You don't actually have to host an event to make money from events. You can be a sponsor of an event. If you target the correct conferences and pay that sponsorship fee, and then have ways to engage the audience at the event, this ROI is very easy to make.
If I asked you how much would you pay to be in a room full of qualified leads that you could just speak with and go have a drink with and hang out with, people would say a lot. And an event is one possible way to do that. Now, it can be tricky as a sponsor. Sometimes they feel like they're a sideshow, but my encouragement as sponsors is be a part of the event. Go to all the activities, walk around, get to know everyone. They want to get to know you as much as they do want to get to know your product.
I think one way to successfully sponsor an event and have the insurance against wasting all your travel time and everything is to have a mindset as to how you're going to engage those conference attendees based on what those conference attendees expect out of the event. What we see work is raffles work, games work. Hosting a party is a really good one if you can do that, if you can get the conference attendee to do that. So it's hey, Dynamite Circle paid for this party here. That's a good one. If you can give away things to the audience, people are paying attention. Like, oh man, we're giving away all these gifts. If you can have some kind of audit, like, hey, if you come to our booth, within 5 minutes, we can tell you, how much is your business worth or whatever. There's all these different ways that you can work with the conference host to add to the event, to give those conference attendees more of what they want. And so what I would consider is like that sponsorship fee should be just the beginning of your planning. Then it should be like, well, what are we going to do in terms of giveaways? What are we going to do in terms of an experience at the event? How are we going to engage? How are we going to be seen as a big contributor at this event? That's typically the best way to get your ROI on your sponsorship fee.
An event hosts, they want sponsors to be a partner. They want to be a contributor, not a detractor. So all you have to do is ask the host, how can I contribute? How can I make this event better for you and the attendees? And obviously another part of that costing you to plan for is having team members there participating. But you can have team members with their calendars wide open, and the event host will help you set up that calendar so attendees can book time to chat with your team members. Funny thing that happens at events too is people in the group chat start getting friendly and talking, and inevitably they start asking for recommendations for different services. And if your team is very active and getting to know people, not pushy, but just getting your name out there and chatting with other attendees, when it comes time, people are asking for marketing agencies, different kinds of services. There's a high chance that in that group chat, like, oh, have you checked out these guys? They're actually sponsoring. And when I see that happening in the group chat, I know that my sponsors have done a good job getting their name out there, getting to know everybody. So it starts to compound on itself when the attendees start talking about you.
I'll add an extra tip here, which is like the piggyback method. So you don't have to sponsor an event to quite sponsor an event. You can also host an event around a larger event. So to do like a satellite event is a very common way to get a sense for how eventing could add to your bottom line. So it's like if everybody's going, 1,000 people going to X event, perhaps you can engage your audience and be like, the day before, we're doing this. We're hosting this dinner party. Here's what's going to happen. Here's the value you're going to get from it. It's another way to like kind of shadow sponsor an event that I think a lot of brands use like really, really effectively. Okay, so continuing on talking about ways to make money from events, I'll just use an example of an event company that's like really taken off here in Austin in the past few years. They're called Breakfast Club. And what they do is they've identified this niche in the cycling world where they create these inclusive, enormous, like Grand Fondo style group rides that are free. And that's a really cool experience to be on the road with like 100 other cyclists, to be protected by police cars, to have snacks at the end. Everybody goes to a brewery or whatever. Do you think the brewery's charging an event fee to have a couple hundred cyclists show up at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning? No, man, they're supporting this. So now you can start to do deals with local vendors on off times that they're happy to host just for the clientele. So the way you can monetize this is you can then have a premium membership. So your event strategy is then to capture as many people as possible. The more people that come, the event gets better. It gets cooler. If it's 200 versus 100, 200 options better, right? And so now you can reliably upsell a percentage of those attendees into some kind of annual club deal, which in this case features discounts on cool cycling brands, and you get a kit. It's a recurring membership you pay every year. You get a free chat group. This is a cool way to use events as simply a marketing channel. It's like we are going to host something that gets cooler the more people that come. And then, hey, if you really want to be cool when you're here, you can buy access to the premium tier of this gathering. Another way to make money is high ticket events. These tend to work better for really established brands with a large funnel, because the hard part about making money on high ticket events is that the more expensive the ticket, the more friction you're putting from your customers attending. Typically what I'm seeing is people use what I'll call the Costco method. You like buy your membership access and you can get a couple tiers, and that membership has a huge gross margin. Costco is kind of a higher end shopping experience. But importantly, I trust what's happening on the inside, which is I'm going to have access to great quality products at the right margin. And this is essentially the model that we've developed for the Dynamite Circle. So we have an event coming up in New York in a few weeks, and the event ticket was $1,700. Well, guess how much of that $1,700 we're investing back into the client experience? $1,700, 17, maybe $1,800, maybe $1,900, maybe $2,200. The point is that we're making our margin on the membership, and then we're investing the ticket price back into that value exchange experience. So that's a promise that a lot of event companies roll with. You see these like big trip companies, they like leverage their group to like get good discounts. And so it's like, by paying this membership, by being in access to this club, I get experiences that are actually much more affordable than I could do it on my own. I've seen a lot of our members start to do it. You have this membership that has a variety of different elements throughout the year, and one of them is getting together in person. It increases retention, it builds community, and it reduces the friction to getting as many people to the event as possible. So that's sort of the idea. Like, at the end of the day, ticket price has a lot of impact on how many people are willing to buy your event, depending on your brand up front. So if you can lower that price relative to the value that they can receive, more people will come out. And so this is a common model I'm seeing.
There's always a push and pull between what's happening right now with New York and our DC Black, between push and pull between finance and operations. So I think you need to have a really strong vision as a team to know exactly where each dollar is going. I'm guilty of it and going both ways, whether it's we don't have enough money, we need to be stingy, or spending too much. And so that, following that Costco model, the company needs to be very clear about where every dollar is going, what the purpose of each product is. So it can be a little tricky, but it's not a problem as long as everyone is aligned.
There's a couple other ways you can monetize. We talked about coaching, consult, or workshop. I think this is one of the best ways to deliver value to your clients. Like, if you're not willing to do an in-person or don't want to do an in-person, just do a virtual event and see how it goes. Connecting your customers with each other can often be a magical experience. You'll hear directly what they want more of. And on future coaching consults, you can provide that right there on the call. So when people join the Dynamite Circle, they get to introduce each other. They get to get the value they wanted right away. It's like, I just wanted to meet other people like me. Well, here's 6 other people like you. Here's where everybody lives. Here's how everybody makes money. And then they get exposed to ways that they can do more with the brand, whether it's come to New York and with us and hang out, or come to Bangkok, or join a mastermind, or have their team members join a mastermind. Or there's all these like timing elements to events. Can be a very effective delivery method for saying, hey, if you want to do more, here are some ways you can push it even further if you're loving what you're experiencing, versus doing all that, on the front end of your website can be very complicated. So if you have a simple offer, you bring people to that consult where they're onboarded as a customer, it's an event experience, and then at that point, they can learn about what they can do more with the brand. I think events is a retention tool. You see a lot of gyms doing this, actually. The same thing with the gym membership. You lock people in to the annual gym membership, and you have a few offsites a year to build community, get people connected, and make it much more likely that people retain their membership to the gym. We also got licensed format events. The classic example of this is a TEDx event. You can actually create a process for your customers to host events on your behalf, or your brand partners to host events on your behalf. So if you have a format that really works for your customers, you have passionate community leaders, you could be a leader vis-a-vis the process. You could train people in your ecosystem to host events on your behalf. So we call that like a license type format. If it's working, if you set the model, your constraint's going to be how many events you can go to. Well, guess who can go to a lot more events is your customers or your partners. So perhaps they could execute on your behalf. And then we also just talked about, just want to reiterate this virtual event concept of, we can test all this stuff out virtual online before we take it in person. Before we move on to the ideas of, how to have a killer event, I just want to talk about probably like the big problem with events is how do you get people to show up? I think this is the sort of sticking point and why virtual events can be a good stepping stone. It's like, hey, we're going to have a successful virtual event if 3 people show up, if 30 people show up. So let's start there. But then the question becomes, well, I'm flying to New York in 6 months. I think it would be a good opportunity for me to host my first event. How do I know if people are even going to show up? And then how do I do that juggling balance between the expenses required to host the event and making sure I sell enough tickets to pay for said expenses? I feel like these are the 2 sort of challenges that event hosts always face.
Yeah, I think you said it was starting backwards from the goal. And we'll do that example flying into New York. Many of us in our business lives have gone through this. So if you want to host an event, I think it's actually really good to start with the specifics as much as possible, because when our members would like to host an event, sometimes it'll be a general, hey, would anyone like to come to Africa? Would anyone like to come to Argentina? Well, everyone would like to come to Argentina and Africa, but you need to get down with specifics. And so I recommend to start with, hey, I'm going to be in New York on December 9th. I've reserved a table for 5 at 1 p.m. I'm only inviting a handful of people. Let me know if you can come. It's very clear. It's very legible. You can easily check your calendar, say yes or no. You've made it personal. Whereas if you did an outreach that was, hey, I'm coming to New York, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Maybe you want to hang out. Doesn't work. And so you start with the leadership right there. And that does scale up into a point, because if you did reach out to 10 people, and in my experience, like if they're people that half will say yes. If it's that kind of thing, that's just like a general rule you can use. Like about half are going to say yes if they're people you already know and they have enough time. But if all 10 people you invited said yes, it's easy. Just call a restaurant, you get a table for 10. It's not a big deal. Now, if you want to increase from there, you don't need to start worrying about renting rooms until you're at 20, 30. Even then, you don't necessarily need to have a private space. You just need to talk with the management of the venue and say, hey, I'm going to be a little loud for this time. Or as Dan mentioned with the bike club going to a brewery in the morning, you say, hey, what's a good off hours time for us to be there? And you can work with them. So yeah, where to start with hosting the event? Just work backwards from the goal. And it's easy to start with those things.
We've learned a lot from the DCX London crew who hosts these incredible events in London. And one of the members of that team is John Ainsworth, and he's a great marketer. He's been on the show before. And he's got this concept of, if you can develop an interest list that is visible and larger than the amount of tickets available. So it requires some commitment in terms of how you want to cap the event. But this is a good way to solve this classic chicken egg problem. It's like, I've got 60 people on an interest list. They all know that they're all interested. There's 30 tickets available to come to this event. That is a very effective way. Capping the tickets at a level that's below what you could ultimately have at the event is a good way to do it. It's tough for event organizers because they're putting on an event and they want to have the maximum amount of people come as possible, typically. I believe this is like a really good marketing principle for events. The other thing is, like, I think events require a stronger financial perspective on, you've got your ticket money, which is what people are paying to come to the event. And then you've got your system money, which is like, how much I'm going to gain in additional sales and retention because of the event. And if you can create sort of a blended outlook of like when your cash is going to return, this is the most effective way where, like, if you're going to have a small event, it's very useful at minimum to sell tickets to the next event, or to have some sort of premium offering that those attendees can take advantage of at the event. This is a way to make your P&L make sense, essentially. One of the things I've noticed, just a warning for entrepreneurs out there, when you are adding an event element to your company, I am generally wary of event organizers as a space, because there's 2 sides to events. There is on the one hand, you've got the business logic. You've got spreadsheets. You've got your financial analysis. You've got your strategy of what types of experiences that your customers truly associate with your brand and that they love. Then on the other side, you've got this whole like event artifice out there in the marketplace, like event producers and planners that do this stuff all day long. And often they're maximizing for their side of the industry, which is, spaces and vibes and lighting and how many handshakes happened and what the welcome drink looks like and stuff like this. I encourage entrepreneurs to not hand it over to one of these professionals and instead really focus on the brand experience you're trying to drive and then see where the event professionals fit into that. Because what we've found by doing hundreds of events at this point is that they don't understand. So accepting them as leaders in the process doesn't work for our particular brand. It probably doesn't work for yours either. So coming in with a really strong perspective of what kind of experience you're trying to deliver, I think is important, especially when you're dealing with professionals who might have a completely different idea of what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great take. People ask me for advice on events. I say, well, who are you currently speaking with and who's helping you with it? And when they say, I'm speaking with an event consultant, and I've spoken with a few of them, I think they're best for, the surprise and delight elements, which is a part of a good event, or, making sure the colors look right, or, you should have your signage in this venue. Did you think about that when you walk in there? Like, no, I didn't think about that. That's good. Those little elements. But then when the person who's organizing the event says, no, I'm working with my operations manager, I get excited. I'm like, all right, let's hear about this, because they're the ones looking at the spreadsheets. And because you can say, my goal is I'm going to have 50 people together. We're going to do these activities. And the operations manager is going to look at the spaces you have. They're going to look at the names of every single person who's going. They're going to be thinking about the logistical experience from when they arrive in that airport to when they get to the hotel, all those different pieces. It's just ingrained in how someone who loves spreadsheets and logistics works. Whereas a lot of, not putting down event coordinators are an essential part of planning an event, but the event coordinator might skip all that and say, all right, you're going to have a seafood themed dinner. It's like, well, that's great. That sounds wonderful. But let's get back to how we're going to be connecting. How are we going to be moving them around this space? This is exactly how much room we have. Whereas, in my experience, operations managers tend to be best at that. There's at least 2 DCers in the community who have started events this past year as a Costco model, just like we are, and they, instead of hiring an events manager, they had their operations manager switch over and start doing that. And it's been pretty seamless. They're still learning these little elements to run an event, but for the attendee experience, it's very smooth, and the founder, the host, can execute on exactly what their goal is.
Cool. So, little side trail, 5 principles for a killer event. Number 1, engineer a connection before, during, and after.
The first principle is, yes, as soon as someone registers for an event or gets on a wait list, our goal is that the experience starts right then. Because what's the dream of an event manager? That you can sell out your event 6 months in advance, you can plan everything, and that's totally possible with the right marketing tactics. But if you sell out in 6 months in advance, and then you don't give them anything to do for 6 months, you're going to have a refund problem on your hands. And so one of our goals immediately is, how do we start developing that experience? And so some simple things right away are the onboarding emails right away. Not just, book your hotel, but here's why you should be staying at the hotel. Here's who's staying at the hotel. Here's a city guide, all the things that are going to be happening. Here's the WhatsApp group to start connecting with other attendees. Here's a list of the attendees. Here's another event you can attend, a virtual event. You can meet 15 other people who are going this Wednesday at 9 a.m. If you join. You're going to walk into the room with knowing friendly faces, reduce that anxiety. And then for things that we don't know when they're going to be announced, we set expectations. The event app will come out later on. Get ready. This is what's going to happen with the event app. So even if you're not ready to execute on everything, you can still set those expectations.
Very cool. What about setting expectations for behavior? What are your thoughts on that?
My analogy here is, Dan, if I'm visiting your house, or if you're visiting my house, there's a certain level of anxiety. Because I've only been to your house a few times. I don't know all the rules, but I know you. I'm comfortable. But when I go to my house, I have no anxiety at all because I know all the rules. It's my space. And when someone's walking into an event, it's a similar thing. And I don't like to use the word rules because it makes it a right and a wrong. But what we try to do is essentially we try to set expectations with the behavior. And by doing that, we share our values. So we really try to share those values, which are we're generous. We help each other. We give each other the benefit of the doubt. We're a global community. Dan, you had a great video. I think it was a week and a half before DCBK. You shared this quick 1-minute Loom video with the attendees saying, this is who we are as a community. Here's how to get the most out of the event. You didn't say any rules, even though they are, in a way, you're kind of imparting rules. You just said, this is how we behave. This is how we act. This is how to get the most out of it. And a lot of people watched that. And whoever did, it really lowered their anxiety and it really set the tone. You're also showing them how you value their time. We keep using the example of, throw them in a room, hope for the best, but you're not showing that you're valuing their time. And when we set these expectations, we're telling them how to get the most out of the event, the attendee feels cared for and they know they can do nothing and still expect something good because it looks like we're taking care of them, or they can put in that extra effort and prepare for the event. They can come with that challenge.
Well, if you don't lead in this way too, the default is that every individual will decide what it means for them on their own and then potentially experience pain when the event does not appear, oh, I thought I was going to be able to sell 3 new clients at this event. And now no one wants to have that conversation with me. And so I'm starting to feel like this event was a waste of my time. And so I'm turning into Mr. Bad Vibes over here because I can't convert 3 customers right away. But look, as an individual, I got a lot of other things that I could get on board with. I could get on board with having the best weekend of my life. I could get on board with meeting 2 new people that I could call. I could get on board with learning more about the brand who's hosting the event. And if you don't lead in that way, why we're all doing this, what we're doing here, then you have this regression to like, I'm just here because I want to be in New York and I actually don't really care about the event. That sucks because this person might actually have a lot to offer in terms of what you're trying to do with your event. Okay, so the first concept is engineer connection before, during, and after. The second is design for energy, not just information.
And I keep coming back to this example of people who want to host events, and common thing that comes to me, I'll say, all right, what do you, after go through those initial things we talked about in terms of who is it for, what are the goals, and we're working backwards from there. It's okay, what kinds of content are you thinking? And everyone does this. I'm guilty of this. I've done it with my events, and I made this mistake a few times, more than I should have. We try to put way too much into the schedule because we want to look like it's very valuable. And we can have a debate about what exactly an attendee is looking at, or so before someone registers, what are some key things that are going to trigger them to get that ticket. But seeing a lot of content in there may or may not be the right thing. And so there is a tendency to really cram a schedule full. And that causes a lot of problems. And I initially thought, well, the schedule's full. Well, you're an adult. Go take a break. And that was wrong. That was wrong of me to put that onto them, because one of our principles as a hosting events is we're the leaders, and we need to be sharing with them what's the best way to take advantage of this, because a lot of the attendees will go through everything, and then if they get burned out and they miss something, they'll feel bad. So for the event, there's a few things that we try to do to alternate between intensity, rest, a little sprinkle of adrenaline. But one main thing is we do our best to keep presentations under 20 minutes. This is extremely challenging, but when it works quite well. So if you look at our schedule for one of our conferences, you'll notice that any session has an hour-long block. Within that block, we have planned for 20 minutes of the presentation, and then another 20 minutes of Q&A, and then 20 minutes of people mingling, chatting with each other, and switch for the next session. Whenever we break this rule of going over 20 minutes, it always backfires.
So the principles here, in terms of energy, it's like keep presentations short, sprinkle in competitions, a challenge, a way to connect, some surprises, and build in a lot of breaks. People love the hallway track, so make the hallway track a feature of the event, not a bug. If you're going to do a presentation that's longer than 20 minutes, if you're going to hand that off to a third party that is not the leadership of your company or is not the figurehead in your company, that you need to be very, very careful about, because calibrating your energy and your content for your audience for more than 20 minutes is probably only something you should be doing, or someone that you really, truly understand can command the attention of the audience for longer than 20 minutes. Look, you're not going to like learn some complete new concept in 20 minutes or an hour. We're sort of setting the table for the future journey that everybody's going to take together. If you want to do a workshop where you are going to walk with a deliverable that might take 1 to 3 hours or even all day long, if you cross that 20-minute threshold, it needs to be extremely calibrated and extremely practiced. So as an example, I went to a high ticket event recently in Barcelona, and guess who was running it? Vern Harnish. Guess who can command your attention for 4 hours? Vern Harnish. So it's totally fine. And I was there for Vern Harnish, so I'm down for that. But if I would have showed up and it's Vern Harnish's buddy, do I think Vern Harnish's buddy can stay connected to me for longer than 20 minutes? No. And that's why Vern Harnish's buddy was on stage for 20 minutes. So I think that's a good rule for managing energy at events in general. All right, number 3, sweat the small stuff. Details are the difference between a good event and a 10 out of 10 one. What details matter?
The foundation of the event, I believe, is the venue. We're talking in terms of conferences mostly and main like essential events, but the essential venue, essential hotel is ideal. And this is a place that everybody wants to stay at. It's relatively affordable compared to similar options. You don't need a lot of transportation to go see activities. And it's a place that people want to hang out. So I think essential hotel is often overlooked, but it's really, really critical.
Logistics are vibe killers. So essentially, absolutely reducing logistics. And if your clients are really motivated by your content or the experience of being around each other, it's just like one simple day, one simple central venue. Everybody gets in there. The hotel's right next door. And we're just in the room doing the things we want to do. And there's nothing standing in our way from doing it. That's the simplest thing. I'll often see multi-day things, very complicated. And now we're introducing a lot more financial risk. We're introducing a lot of logistics into it. So these things really matter.
Yeah, the factor for human error needs to be remembered. Every element that you add to that event, every vendor, every extra piece is another thing to go wrong. And this isn't a conversation about, the bad things that go wrong at an event, but just keep in mind, there's bad weather, there are road closures, there's all these things that happen. We've experienced all of them. And when we have a simpler event with fewer links that could break, things go much smoother.
Cool. Number 4, craft a narrative and a purpose. Every attendee should know why they're there and what they'll walk away with. A lot of events in the early days of the internet where like the narrative and the purpose was to meet somebody famous, or to see somebody famous talk. That works. That's totally fine. But in lieu of that, if you don't have that, crafting a narrative, like what is our clear reason for being here and what are we going to take away? Then you can really simplify, we're going to spend this day together getting this result and achieving this thing together as a group. And that's just as good as meeting a famous person, depending on how dialed in you are into the types of results that your customers or prospects want. Okay, final piece. Number 5, over communicate and simplify. Clarity creates calm. Simplicity drives delight.
We're always looking at email stats in our open rates, whatever, unsubscribed. This is true. No one ever unsubscribes from our event emails because attendees want to know what's going on. And we always are pushing heads like, should we share the schedule again? Should we remind them about this? And we push a little further. No one minds. We use WhatsApp, we use the event app, we use the forum, we use email to over communicate. And in our event history, it's more of a recent innovation. And you will have the people who are incredibly organized and will just need, a spreadsheet of the schedule and they'll put it all on their calendar. Their assistant will do it for them and they won't even need to do anything because their phone's going to send them notifications and reminders that the morning of and they're all set. But the vast majority of attendees, they need this reminder and they like it. It's also a way to set the tone to get excited. So don't worry, you're not going to bother the attendees over communicate.
When you're at our events, you get like an email that shows up at 7 a.m. that like reiterates every element of what's going to happen for the rest of the day. When you look at amateur event planners, like for most of us when we're hosting a dinner party, it's often like remarkable to me how under-communicated the events are. There's no like reminder to get ready. There's no like update about who's going to show up or like how to have purpose at the event or what you're going to walk away from. The day of the event, like it's been a month since I read everything, so now I got to like dig back through. And I know there's maybe a few members listening that'll bristle at this me saying this, but there's almost no amount of event communication that's too much because you're there, you're in the event. Like, hey, I'm done with lunch now. What's next? Everybody is opening these emails. And this is like, loop back to the top of the episode. Like, when's the last time you sent an email that the open rate was 90%? And this is the reason we do this in the first place. And so take advantage of it by ensuring that the communication layer, you got communication layer, you got your experience layer, which is all your operations, you got your finance layer, which is making sure you can do all this stuff, that it is just as well designed. And it doesn't take much. I've been invited to events that they want me to like fly somewhere. They want me to get a hotel. And then they want me to meet a bunch of people that I never met before. And they want me to buy a bunch of clothes and gifts. These aren't professional party hosts, but the idea is like, hey, I'm like taking a week or days. I'm investing all this time. I want to really be brought into it. I'm in. Like, I'm already in for a week. You think I'm not in for 3 emails? Like, let me know the way to succeed. Let me know how to prepare. Let me know the information I need to know in order to have this be as seamless as possible. Cool. So we've got a free resource that listeners can download where we've pulled together some of our best event tips. Maybe we could share just like 1 or 2 or 3 of them that might inspire some ideas. And then we'll end with some closing thoughts. Let's see. What are our favorite ones?
I like number 5.
Okay.
So this is something I've noticed from the last DCBKK, our last event in Bangkok, where we're always looking for what's something that can really capture everyone's attention. What's that big moment? And what we were noticing was there wasn't one thing that everybody went to. It was all a bunch of little things that they were enjoying. So what I'm trying to do with our events moving forward is having a lot of little moments, because these add up to being more than a few big moments. And you'll also notice this as an organizer at the end of the event, when you can relax and hopefully enjoy it. People will come up and say, hey, this was great. And you ask, okay, well, what did you like? And everyone has their own little moment they want to share. And so obviously it's a lot of work, but all those little moments add up to those big moments.
Cool. I can talk about like just a few things. Like, you got to be able to sell your tickets. So you got to have like a good conception, or you got to get people in the room. So you got to sort that out on the top end. You got to be able to pay for all it. That's the finance part. But in terms of organization, like, as long as like the venue is conducive to the type of content you want to deliver or the type of experience, the actual bare bones logistics of that are way more important than the vibe. And this is where like the operations versus like event planner dialectic comes up. So a common example would be a loud restaurant venue that's really cool. Well, if your schedule is designed to meet as many people as possible, better to do it in a sterile lobby so I can actually do the thing versus the cool restaurant. So looking at noise levels, looking at like pattern flow of attendees, don't lock me in somewhere that I don't want to be for too long. That's another big one. And then finally, don't feed me food that I don't want to eat. If you drop the ball on the food, that can really go haywire.
The food is so important. You will live and die by the food.
The food is really critical to nail the food.
It'll haunt you. Those emails, the chicken wasn't that great. So
100%.
make sure the food is amazing.
Cool. Any closing thoughts? I guess my closing thought just to start it is how much these basic concepts of running an event can help almost any business. So whether it's, guess what an event is? Your sales calls are an event. Do you do these things? Do you over communicate? Do you let your prospects understand how they can be successful on that sales call? Do you set an expectation for how their time will be managed on the sales call? Now we're going to do a one-to-many, a workshop call, or we're going to do a webinar. Do you do the same things effectively? And then all this translates even more powerfully to when you get in person. There's almost no entrepreneur listening to this who can't benefit from taking basic event leadership principles and trying to instill them into every part of their business. Because what is a sales call? What is reading an email? Well, it's an experience of being there, being together with an idea with other people. Can we take some of these event principles and add events in at different parts of the brand experience to deliver more of the value that you promised to your customers? So that's basically the idea. I'm just impressed with how many of the clients that I work with, for example, in masterminds and in executive coaching, just like how much events benefit their business when they manage to deploy them effectively.
I think there are so many lessons that go beyond just whether it's a conference or leadership, guiding people, setting expectations. That's how you run a good event. That's how you host a good sales call, like you said. That's how you host a good dinner party or a family dinner. And as I read these and go through these 5 things in our 20-step checklist for killer events, these are pieces that I try to implement in my personal life as well.
All right, Alex, thanks for joining us today. As we mentioned before, if you click into the show notes of this episode, we will have our free resource, a 20-step checklist for killer events. And if you do implement any of this event thinking in your business, we would love to hear from you. Thanks a lot for listening and for coming to our events on occasion. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. That's it for this Thursday. Thanks for listening.